My husband forgot his watch beside my coffee. Then it lit up. Last night was dangerous. I asked, who is she? He smiled and said, stop making monsters. So I stopped asking questions and hired someone. I didn't hire a private investigator because I wanted drama. I know that's what people picture. A bored, suspicious wife sitting in her car, watching her husband walk into a hotel because she has nothing better to do. That wasn't me. I had 2 kids to get ready every morning, a house that always felt one grocery trip behind, and a marriage I was still stupid enough to protect even when it started making me feel small. It didn't begin with the watch. It began with his phone. Connor used to leave it everywhere. On the couch. On the bathroom counter. In the cup holder of my car. I knew his passcode because sometimes he'd ask me to answer a text while he was driving. It was not some perfect marriage thing. It was just normal. Then one day, his phone was always face down. At dinner, beside his plate. On the nightstand. On the kitchen counter while he poured coffee. If I walked near it, his hand moved toward it before his eyes did. I noticed. I pretended not to. Then came the garage calls. Connor started taking calls outside like our house had suddenly become too loud for him. He would say, I need to focus, even when the only sound was the dishwasher. He would say, it's work, and shut the garage door before I could ask anything else. When he came back in, he looked lighter. That was the part that bothered me first. Not guilty. Not scared. Just lighter. Like whatever was happening on the other side of that door gave him something our life didn't. I tried to talk myself out of it. I told myself people change. People get busy. People want privacy. I didn't want to become the wife who turns every small habit into an accusation. But small habits become patterns when you are the only one pretending not to see them. He started going to the gym at night. Connor was never a gym person for more than a few weeks at a time. He would buy new running shoes, complain about his shoulders, then forget the shoes in the trunk until one of the kids needed space for a backpack. But suddenly he was committed. Tuesday nights. Thursday nights. Sometimes Sunday morning before breakfast. He would leave in gym clothes and come home freshly showered, his hair damp, his skin smelling like soap instead of sweat. His gym bag never had dirty clothes in it. One night, I moved it off the bench by the back door and it felt too light. I opened it. Inside was a towel, deodorant, and a small bottle of perfume. Not mine. Mine was softer. This one was sharp and sweet, the kind of smell that punches the back of your throat. I stood there with that bottle in my hand, and my first thought was not, he's cheating. My first thought was, put it back exactly where it was. That scared me later. Because some part of me already knew I needed evidence more than I needed answers. I put it back. I didn't ask him that night. I made dinner. I listened to Bella complain about a group project. I helped Owen find a clean shirt for school. Connor sat at the table, scrolling his phone with one thumb, smiling at something that was not for us. After the kids went to bed, he asked me why I was quiet. I said, just tired. He kissed my forehead like that solved everything. The watch happened the next morning. It was one of those chaotic school mornings where everything feels wet or missing. Owen couldn't find his other shoe. Bella remembered she needed money for something she swore she told me about. I was wiping juice off the counter, packing lunches, and trying not to yell. Connor had already left. Or at least, he had said he left. His smartwatch was sitting beside the coffee maker. It lit up while I was reaching for my mug. Heather, last night was dangerous. I keep thinking about it. I froze. The kitchen kept moving around me. The toaster popped. Bella called from the hallway. Owen yelled that he found his shoe under the couch. I just stood there, staring at my husband's watch. Last night was dangerous. Dangerous how? Last night he said he went to the gym. He came home late, kissed me on the cheek while I was half asleep, and whispered, long workout. I almost laughed, but nothing came out. Bella walked in and said, Mom. I put the mug down too hard. Coffee spilled across the counter. She looked at the watch, then at me. I said, I'm fine. Grab your backpack. I got them to school. I went through the rest of the day like my body was still functioning, but my mind had been left in the kitchen. That sentence kept playing in my head. Last night was dangerous. I waited until the kids were upstairs that evening. Connor was at the table, eating leftovers and watching something on his phone. I stood across from him and said, Who is Heather? His eyes flicked up. Just once. Then he laughed. That was the moment something in me cracked. Not because laughter proved anything, but because it sounded so practiced. Like I had become a scene he had rehearsed for. He said, What? I said, A message came through on your watch. He set his fork down slowly, like I was being unreasonable and he needed patience. She's just someone I know. Someone you know? From work stuff. She's flirty with everyone. She texted you that last night was dangerous. Connor leaned back and rubbed his eyes. Vanessa, come on. I hated the way he said my name. Soft, tired, superior. I said, you told me you were at the gym. I was. Then I stopped by for one drink with a few people. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew you'd do this. Do what? This. He waved his hand toward me. Make something out of nothing. The room went very still. I wanted to ask about the perfume. I wanted to ask about the calls. I wanted to ask why his phone was suddenly locked like a government file. But he stood up before I could speak. He came behind me while I was standing at the sink. He put his arms around my waist. His chin rested on my shoulder. You need to stop making monsters out of nothing, he said. I hate admitting this, but part of me wanted to believe him. Not because he sounded honest. Because the alternative was too big. If he was lying, then I was not just dealing with a bad text. I was standing inside a marriage where my husband could smile at me, touch me, eat beside me, parent with me, and still have another life sitting inches away on his wrist. So I backed down. I said maybe I was stressed. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe the message sounded worse than it was. He kissed the side of my head. The next morning, he changed his phone passcode. After that, I became quiet. Not calm. Quiet. There is a difference. I stopped asking questions out loud and started keeping them in my notes app. Hotel charge in Charlotte. Wednesday night. Wine bar charge. Same night he said he was helping his brother. Second phone charger in the car. Not his type. Perfume still in gym bag. New shirt. Cash withdrawal. I hated myself while doing it. I hated how my stomach dropped every time I found something new. I hated how I still folded his shirts, moved his coffee mug to the sink, and answered the kids when they asked if we had more cereal. The Charlotte charge bothered me the most. Connor told me he had been at his brother's place that night, helping with a water heater issue. His brother, Spencer, lived close enough that it sounded believable if I didn't think too hard. I didn't ask Spencer. I asked Spencer's wife, Audrey. I made it casual. Too casual, probably. I called her while sitting in the grocery store parking lot and said, "Hey, did Connor leave his jacket at your place the other night? He said he was over there helping Spencer." There was a pause. Audrey said, "What night?" I told her. Another pause. Then she said, "No, he wasn't here." My hands went cold around the steering wheel. She asked, "Is everything okay?" I said yes too quickly. She didn't believe me. I heard it in her silence. When I hung up, I sat in that parking lot for almost 20 minutes. People walked past with carts. A man loaded bottled water into his trunk. Someone's toddler screamed because they dropped a snack. The world kept acting normal. Mine didn't. That night, Connor came home with flowers. Not expensive ones. Grocery store flowers. The kind wrapped in plastic with a sticker still on them. He said, "You've seemed off." I looked at him standing in our kitchen with those flowers, and I almost asked him if he bought another woman better ones. Instead I said, "Thanks." He smiled like he had repaired something. That was when I knew I couldn't confront him again without proof. Not guesses. Not perfume. Not charges he could explain. Not a message he could laugh away. Proof. I searched for private investigators while Connor slept beside me. The first website made me feel ridiculous. The second made me feel worse. By the third, I was crying quietly in the bathroom with the shower running so he wouldn't hear me. I kept thinking, once I do this, I become that wife. The wife who hires someone. The wife who admits her marriage is something that needs surveillance. The wife who crosses a line and can never uncross it. Then I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, no. He crossed it. I'm just trying to find out where he went. Victor's office was in a small building between a tax service and a nail salon. Nothing about it looked dramatic. No dark hallway. No frosted glass door. Just a waiting room with old magazines and a machine that made bad coffee. I almost left. My hand was on the car door, ready to start the engine and drive home, when my phone buzzed. "Connor, taking a late meeting tonight. Don't wait up." I stared at the message. Then I got out of the car. Victor was polite in a way that made everything worse. He didn't act shocked. He didn't make faces. He asked for dates, times, habits, vehicles, and likely locations. I gave him what I had. When I showed him the watch message, he nodded once. He said, "Do you want confirmation, or do you want the full picture?" I didn't understand the difference at first. He explained that some people only want enough to make a decision. Others want names, places, and patterns. I thought about the perfume, the hotel, The way Connor smiled when he told me I was making monsters. I said, full picture. Victor didn't promise anything dramatic. He said he would stay within legal boundaries and document what he could. He also said sometimes the truth is smaller than fear, and sometimes it is bigger. Mine was bigger. The first report came 6 days later. Victor called and asked if I could come to his office instead of sending everything by email. I knew from his voice that he had found something. I drove there with both hands tight on the wheel. He didn't waste time. He placed a folder in front of me. The first photo was Connor outside a hotel in Charlotte. With Heather. She looked normal. Pretty in a normal way. Hair pulled back. One hand on his arm. Connor had his head tilted toward her, smiling like she was telling him the funniest thing in the world. I stared at his face. That was the part that hurt. Not her hand. Not the hotel. His face. At home, Connor looked tired. He looked burdened. He looked like the kids asking for help with homework was a tax on his soul. He looked like kissing me goodnight required effort. In that photo, he looked alive. Victor slid another photo forward. This one was not Heather. It was a different woman. Another place. Another night. I looked up at him. He said, I don't think this is one affair. I thought I was ready for proof. I wasn't. I had spent months imagining one woman. One betrayal. One ugly story I could maybe understand if I twisted myself hard enough. Connor was not having one affair. He had built a second version of himself, and apparently that version was generous, charming, patient, and available to everyone except his wife. Victor showed me the timeline slowly. Heather was the first woman I knew by name because of the watch. She had met Connor several times in Charlotte. A hotel. Drinks. A parking garage. A restaurant he once told me was too expensive for what it is, which was funny in a way that made me want to throw up. Then there was Savannah. Victor had photos of them walking out of a bar 2 towns over, Connor's hand resting low on her back. Not friendly. Not accidental. Not something a husband does when he respects the woman folding his laundry at home. Then there was Catherine. Catherine was different because she had been around longer. Victor didn't say that part cruelly. He just pointed to the dates. Almost 10 months. 10 months. I sat in that chair, trying to breathe around the number. 10 months meant Connor had kissed me on our anniversary while already lying to another woman. 10 months meant he had watched Bella start 7th grade while texting someone else good morning. 10 months meant he had sat beside me at Owen's school event, clapping like a proud father, with secrets still warm in his pocket. Victor asked if I needed a break. I said no because I knew if I stopped, I might never let him finish. There were dating profiles. A hidden email. Paid accounts I didn't recognize. Connor had used his middle name and a slightly different birthday, like changing 2 details made him invisible. He told some women he was separated. He told one I was unstable. That word sat in my chest like a stone. Unstable. I remembered him telling me to stop making monsters. I remembered the forehead kisses, the patient sighs, the way he trained me to doubt my own eyes. He hadn't only cheated. He had prepared a version of me that made his cheating easier. Victor said, I'm sorry. I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. I left his office with the folder on the passenger seat. I kept glancing at it while driving, like it might move. Like the papers had a pulse. When I got home, Connor was making grilled cheese for Owen. He looked up and said, Hey, you're late. Just normal. So painfully normal. Owen was at the counter, swinging his legs, telling Connor about something that happened at recess. Bella was upstairs with music playing too loud. The house smelled like butter and toasted bread. For 1 second, I almost convinced myself to wait forever. I could lock the folder away. Pretend I didn't know. Keep the house standing. Keep the kids in one home. Keep birthdays and school mornings and Christmas pictures intact. Then Connor looked at his phone and smiled. Not at me. Not at our son. At the screen. That smile killed the last week part of me. I didn't confront him that night. I called a lawyer the next morning. Caroline's office was quiet and clean, the kind of place that makes you feel messy just by sitting there. I brought the folder, bank statements, screenshots, and credit card records. She reviewed everything without making the dramatic faces I wanted someone to make. Part of me wanted her to gasp. To say, this is awful. To validate that I was not being cold or dramatic. Instead, she said, you need to protect yourself before you confront him. That sentence became my rope. She explained what I could and could not do. She told me not to drain accounts, not to threaten, not to post, and not to send messages while emotional. She told me to gather documents, secure copies, and move only what I was legally allowed to move. I followed her instructions exactly. For 2 weeks, I lived in the house with Connor like a ghost pretending to be a wife. I made lunches, signed school forms, washed towels, answered him when he asked what we had for dinner, watched him kiss Bella on the top of her head while she rolled her eyes and smiled, watched him help Owen tie his cleats. Those moments messed with me. People want cheaters to look like villains all the time. It would be easier if they did. But Connor could be kind to the kids. He could refill my car with gas. He could ask if I wanted tea when I had a headache. And then he could walk into the garage and lie. That is the part people do not understand unless they have lived it. Betrayal is not always one big monster crashing through the door. Sometimes it sits across from you eating pasta and asking if there is Parmesan. During those 2 weeks, Connor noticed something. He said, "You've been weird lately." I was loading the dishwasher when he said it. I almost laughed. I said, "Have I?" He leaned against the counter. "Yeah." Distant. I looked at him then. He seemed genuinely annoyed. Not worried. Not guilty. Annoyed that my pain had become inconvenient before he even knew I had it. I said, "Maybe I'm tired." He said, "You're always tired now." The old me would have apologized. The new me closed the dishwasher and walked away. I arranged for Bella and Owen to stay with my sister, Julia, on a Saturday. I told them I had some boring adult errands and they could have a movie night with their aunt. They were thrilled. They packed pajamas and snacks and did not notice that my hands shook while I zipped Owen's bag. When Julia came to pick them up, she hugged me a second longer than usual. I had told her some of it. Not all. Enough. She whispered, "Call me when it's done." After they left, the house felt too quiet. Connor was in the living room watching a game. He looked irritated when I asked him to come to the kitchen. He said, "Can this wait?" I said no. Something in my voice made him pause. He followed me. I had placed the folder on the table. Not thrown. Not scattered. Just sitting there, neat and heavy. Connor looked at it, then at me. "What's that?" I said, "Open it." He gave this short, annoyed laugh. "Vanessa, what is this?" "Open it." He did. The first photo was him and Heather outside the hotel. His face changed so fast it almost satisfied me. Almost. He closed the folder immediately. That was his first mistake. Not an explanation. Not an apology. Just an instinct to hide the evidence even from himself. He said, "This isn't what it looks like." I sat across from him. "What does it look like?" He didn't answer. I said, "Because it looks like you've been cheating on me with multiple women." His mouth opened, then closed. He tried to shrink each betrayal into something smaller. Heather had pursued him. Savannah was just drinks that went too far. Catherine misunderstood because he had been in a bad place. He made each woman sound like bad weather that happened to him. I listened for a few minutes. Not because I believed him. Because I wanted to see how long it would take before he made me the reason. It didn't take long. He said, "You and I haven't been good for a while." There it was. I asked, "So you told people I was unstable?" His face went pale. That was the one he hadn't expected me to know. I opened the folder and pulled out the screenshots. He stared at them. Then the confidence drained out and the panic came in. He said, "I was embarrassed." I asked of me. No. Of myself. For half a second, I saw the man I married. The one who cried when Bella was born. The one who held my hand when my father got sick. The one I had built a life with. Then he said, "I think I have a problem." And that half second died. I knew what he was doing. Maybe he knew too. He was trying to drag the conversation out of betrayal and into illness. Out of choices and into treatment. Out of consequences and into my responsibility to help him heal. He reached across the table for my hand. I moved mine away. He started crying. I don't know if the tears were real. Maybe they were. Maybe being caught finally made him see the damage. But I had spent too long being softened by his emotions while he sharpened knives behind my back. He said, "I love you." I said nothing. I never stopped loving you. Still nothing. Then came the sentence that broke me. They meant nothing. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Something just went dead quiet inside. I said, "You destroyed our marriage for people who meant nothing?" He looked at me like I had twisted his words. I hadn't. He begged me not to tell anyone. The kids didn't need details. His parents would never understand. People would judge him without knowing the whole story. I said, "I already filed." He stared at me. "What?" I already filed. That was the first time I saw real fear on his face. Not when he saw the photos. Not when I mentioned Catherine. Not when I pulled out the screenshots. He became scared when he realized I had moved without asking his permission to feel sure. He stood up too fast. The chair scraped the floor. You don't get to decide this alone. I almost laughed then. You already did. He paced the kitchen and asked what I wanted from him. He asked if I wanted him ruined. He asked if I wanted to destroy the family. That word again. Destroy. As if the person finding the wreckage is the one who caused it. I told him he needed to leave for the night. He refused at first. Then I told him the kids were not coming home until he was gone, and if he wanted their first memory of this divorce to be walking into a fight, that was on him. He left 2 hours later with a duffel bag and a face that looked more offended than sorry. I stood in the entryway after the door closed. The house did not feel peaceful. It felt wounded. The next few weeks were ugly in a quiet way. Connor rented a place nearby and started telling people we had grown apart. I knew because the messages came in. People said they were sorry we couldn't make it work. They said marriage was hard. They hoped we both found peace. I wanted to throw my phone across the room every time. We did not grow apart. He stepped outside the marriage over and over, then came home and watched me blame myself for the distance. At first, I didn't correct everyone. I did not have the energy to turn my pain into a public case file. But when his mother, Margaret, called me crying and asked why I was being so cruel, I told her enough. Not everything. Enough. There was a long silence after I finished. Then she said I didn't know. His father, Philip, got on the phone after that. He only said, "I'm sorry. They have not called me cruel since. The kids know we are divorcing because their dad broke promises in the marriage." Bella understood more than Owen. She watched me too closely for days, like she was trying to read the parts one wasn't saying. One night, she asked, "Did Dad cheat?" I froze. I wanted to lie. Not to protect Connor. To protect her. But 13 is old enough to know when adults are insulting your intelligence. I said, "Your dad made choices that hurt our marriage very badly. Some of those choices involved other people. That is all you need to carry right now." She cried. I held her. I hated him more in that moment than I did when I saw the photos. Because the photos hurt me. That conversation hurt my child. Owen mostly asked if Connor would still come to his games. I told him yes. Connor has, to his credit, shown up for the kids. That makes things harder in a strange way. If he disappeared or became cruel to them, anger would be simple. But he didn't. He became a better weekend father than he had been a full-time husband, and I am still trying not to be bitter about that. Then Catherine contacted me. I was sitting in my car outside the grocery store, the same one where I had called Audrey weeks earlier, when the message came through. She said she was sorry. She said she didn't know Connor was still married. He told her we were separated and only living in the same house for the kids. She had started questioning things after I filed because parts of his story stopped making sense. Then she asked if I would be willing to talk. I stared at her message for a long time. Part of me wanted to block her. Part of me wanted to send her every file I had. And part of me, the ugliest part, wanted all of us in one room. Every woman. Every lie. Every version of Connor forced to stand under the same light. But revenge is exhausting when you are the one who has to organize it. I met her anyway. Not for her. That is what I told myself. I met her at a small coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday morning because I needed to see whether Connor had turned me into a villain in real life, not just in screenshots. Catherine was nervous when she walked in. She looked around, saw me, and almost turned back. I don't know what she expected. Maybe screaming. Maybe insults. I just said, "Hi." She sat down and started crying before she even took off her coat. Connor had told her I was controlling. That we were separated emotionally. That I used the kids to keep him trapped. That he slept in the guest room. That he was trying to leave gently because I was fragile. Fragile. That word made me smile, but not in a kind way. I said, "We didn't have a guest room." Her face crumpled. That was when I believed she hadn't known. Not because she cried. People cry when they are caught. But because she looked humiliated in a way I recognized. Like she was replaying every tender moment and realizing it had been staged. I showed her enough to understand. Not everything. I wasn't going to bleed all over a coffee table for a woman who was still part of the worst year of my life, even if she didn't mean to be. She apologized again. I said, "I believe you didn't know." She looked relieved. Then I said, "But I need you to understand something. Your pain is real. Mine is not your shelter." She nodded. That was the first boundary I said out loud and actually felt. I didn't meet Heather. I didn't meet Savannah. I didn't go hunting for every woman Connor had lied to. Catherine made her own choices after that. I heard later she sent him one message and blocked him. I don't know what it said. I don't need to. The divorce is moving forward. Connor tried one more time to ask for counseling. He sent a long email about healing, regret, and how he was finally ready to be honest. I read it twice. Not because I was tempted, but because I wanted to see if he ever mentioned what he had done without making himself the wounded center of it. He didn't. So I forwarded it to Caroline and did not respond. That was my revenge, I think. Not exposing him to everyone we knew. Not destroying his job. Not begging people to pick sides. Just refusing to keep participating in his version of reality. I don't feel powerful every day. Some mornings I still wake up and reach for a life that isn't there anymore. Some nights, after the kids are asleep, I sit on the stairs and grieve the man I thought I married. But I don't miss being lied to. I don't miss the knot in my stomach when his phone buzzed. I don't miss apologizing for noticing. There is a strange calm that comes after the worst thing is finally named. The monster doesn't disappear, but it stops hiding under your bed. It stands in the middle of the room, ugly and real, and you realize you survived seeing it. Connor can tell people we grew apart if he wants. I know the truth. I know I was not crazy. I was not unstable. I was not fragile. I was a woman being lied to by someone who needed my doubt more than he ever needed my love. And now he doesn't get either. So I still wonder sometimes if I did the right thing by meeting Catherine. Maybe I gave her closure she did not deserve from me. Maybe I protected my peace too late. Maybe I should have exposed everything from the start and let the whole thing burn. But for the first time in a long time, the decision was mine. Was I wrong for meeting the woman my husband lied to, or was that the final step in taking my own story back?